When I did my first public accounting of my digital terrorist harassment of my boyfriend in October, I ended that video by saying that the Manosphere is a public health crisis. Any movement, ideology, worldview that celebrates or greenlights digital terrorism or the psychological abuse and torment of women is a public health crisis. We're not talking about hurt feelings. Here, we're talking about real world distress that can and does result in fatalities.
Black feminism is not interested in the Manosphere having a voice. Black feminism sees the Manosphere as a threat. That has been clearly distinguished, clearly stated, and now the politics is being done to help ensure that the Manosphere is being shut down. Can't try to convince me that the Manosphere is so misogynist and so misogynoir, while at the same time promoting policy that would give Black women the reason and the excuse to delete little Black girls. The Manosphere has taken a lot of scrutiny lately, but especially more recently, since the feud of Black feminist Kimberly Nicole Foster and content creator Obsidian has really gone to the next level and is now in litigation. And I want to talk a little bit more about it because not only have I obviously had collaborations with Obsidian in the past, I think the situation speaks to a broader topic that is worth discussing. This is not just about two warring content creators, this is about two warring ideologies. So for those of you who are curious as to how I know Obsidian, he was one of the first content creators to reach out to me and bring me on his platform. When I started YouTube almost 3 years ago now, I didn't really know anybody. I knew nothing about any spaces. I just was kind of just figuring things out. And so he got wind of my content, invited me to collaborate, and then, from that point, introduced me to different content creators. So my personal interaction with Mr. Obsidian has been nothing but positive. I don't agree with a lot of stuff that he says. I also talk to people all the time that I don't 100% agree with. However, I do know that he's a very controversial figure. There are quite a few people, even in the Manosphere space, who do not agree with him. Manosphere is definitely not a monolith. So it's not uncommon to have people online feud over ideals, over different points of views. That's par for the course, right? That's essentially what you do on YouTube. But every so often, lines are crossed. And this is what happened in the case of Mr. Obsidian and Kimberly Nicole Foster, right? They had been going back and forth over months, and it got so bad that it ended up going into litigation. I think it's currently still in litigation, and also resulted in the deletion and removal of both channels that Obsidian owns. As far as I know, he will not be returning to the YouTube platform and is now taking his channel and doing things on Rumble. Now, when you listen to the story, there's really a back and forth, right? I mean, things did get a little out of hand, but really, after having heard some of the details from her point of view and his point of view, my first thought was, why didn't you just block, right? Because I'm like, look, I don't have nearly the following of Miss Kimberly Nicole Foster, and I haven't been on YouTube as long as Mr. Obsidian, but it's like, just with the, my little small corner of the universe, I had people send me death threats, do videos about me, try to post personal information, all kind of different stuff. And I got to where I was just like, block. So not to undermine the different distress, right? Or the different anxiety that this feud maybe created for both of them. My question came back to, why didn't you just block one another? Like, this could have avoided so much. But the reason I think this didn't happen, the reason I think there wasn't a block, and the reason I think both content creators continue to engage on some level is because this is not just about two warring content creators. This is about two warring ideologies. Because ultimately there are politics associated with these different spheres of the internet. Is Kimberly Nicole Foster represents a very large fraction of the Black women, those who identify as Black feminists, and even those who consider themselves more conservative have feminist ideals. It's almost impossible to be a person today in America and not have some feminist ideals. It's Mr. Obsidian, the non-select Black man. How many men are going to understand and are going to appeal to that? And this is exactly why I think it went to litigation. And this is exactly why, in my opinion, Miss Kim Foster took the step to ensure that this man's channel was taken down, because she really does believe, right, that not only his channel, but this entire Manosphere space is toxic, is dangerous, is misogynistic. Black feminism is not interested in the Manosphere having a voice. And from what I've seen, I think most people in the manosphere don't really care about Black feminism because they grew up under it. But increasingly more so, they're pushing for reality that's going to help impact and improve their situation in their lives. And so this is the tension that in and of itself kind of puts them at odds. That's what this entire situation was about. There are powers that be that ultimately are not interested in having men have a voice, especially if those men are not saying things that are in alignment with the status quo and come off as quite misogynistic. Now, to be clear, I don't support misogyny or misandry. I don't think any of it's good, and none of it is empowering for the Black community. But ultimately, Black feminism sees the manosphere as a threat. That has been clearly distinguished, clearly stated, and now the politics is being done to help ensure that the manosphere is being shut down. We've seen that now, just with this one situation. We're seeing that now with the different media representation of the manosphere being toxic. You're seeing that with the different reports about the manosphere that are coming out of the educational systems. And you're seeing that with people who might actually be trying to push for policy, in the case of Ms. Kim Foster, to help regulate or essentially take this space out. So this is what I think the ultimate goal is, honestly, is to try to help regulate or just completely remove the space for men to have a voice. So my one critique that I have for those who say that the manosphere is, in her words, a digital terrorist space is, rarely, if ever, do I hear people actually engage the intellectuals, the PhDs, the people who actually have not only the theories, who actually have the sources and the arguments to back up why this space is necessary. I never, if ever, see it. I've never heard a Black feminist try to engage with Dr. Tommy Curry. I've never seen a Black feminist try to engage with Dr. T. Johnson. These aren't just random men stuck up in an apartment somewhere who didn't get past high school and have no social skills. These are tenured professors who have written books, who have research, who have been published, who are teaching currently. So it's not just some random idea. They actually have substantial research to support their claims and necessity for this kind of space. But anytime I hear there being critiques of the manosphere, it's never done on the ideology. It's always done based upon the belligerent behavior of a random YouTuber over there or a random person over there. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that are out of pocket. Obviously there are. As I mentioned before, the manosphere is not a monolith. I've heard videos on content creators and things that I think are completely toxic. Yes, I agree with that. But the same can be true in the Black femininity space. I have seen a ton of female content creators that, in my point of view, have been incredibly misandrous. And you can't you can't try to convince me that the manosphere is so misogynist and so misogynoir, while at the same time promoting policy that would give Black women the reason and the excuse to delete little Black girls. I can't get around it. I know people say, well, it's a choice and I'm pro-choice, but I'm that little Black girl doesn't have a pro-choice? She doesn't have a choice? She doesn't have a choice to be alive? These are the same politics I said, I'm not marching for Eric Garner. The same politics that essentially spat on the death of Black men. Having that published across all of these different media platforms is not terrorism. Women do the same thing, okay? There is incredibly misandrous pages out there that nobody's really caring about. So again, that's my issue, right? When I hear people critique the manosphere, I rarely, if ever, hear them critique the actual ideals. I hear them take content creators, use these caricatures of belligerent incel or nixel men, and then point that as the entirety of the manosphere. And like I said, that's very disingenuous, or it can be very dangerous when you're not even willing to engage with a thought leadership. They just say, they just hate their mom. These men are antisocial. This. And yes, I'm not saying there's not there. When I hear some of these critiques, or I hear it, painted abroad as everybody's like that, I'm thinking, okay, either you're ignorant, right? You're just unaware, or you're being disingenuous, one of the two. Now, after this feud really went public and ended up going to the courts, we started having different men, different content creators being concerned, right? Of are they going to try to go after the next Manosphere channels? Are they going to start to go after channels that are associated with it? I think at the end of the day, as long as you stay within community guidelines, you're not going to have to worry about your channel getting taken down. Now, of course, we know there are always exceptions to this rule, right? I've had my own issues with YouTube, but I think barring doing anything outlandish or crazy, you don't necessarily have to worry about your channel getting taken down unless you just have politics that are way out there. With that said, I've always wondered, will there ever be a time when Black feminists are able to sit down down with people from the Black Manosphere and have an honest conversation, look at the different theories, look at the different points of views. I actually would love that. I would love to see a popular Black male studies professor sit down with a Black feminist and talk about the different ideas, talk about the different point of views, and ultimately talk through how is that impacting the community and what is actually going to be the best thing to help empower the community. I'd love to see that. Now, will that ever happen? I mean, I wouldn't hold my breath. Ultimately, God knows. My personal opinion, obviously, I am much more interested in policies and a reality ultimately that's going to help empower the community, not empower women at the expense of men or vice versa. Now, that warrants a larger conversation. I know some people believe that's impossible in the West. Some people say you have to change the system. Some people say you got to go to Africa, so, or you got to move out of state, country, whatever. Politics can really divide a lot of people. And that's not what I'm wanting to do, but my politics is what's going to help ultimately improve the state of the overall community. How can Black boys and Black girls be improved? Not just Black girls, right? Not just Black boys. What does the reality look like where both of their needs are actually addressed? And is it even possible to have that in the United States of America? Or does that warrant you going outside of the West and going into a completely different paradigm? What do you think? Let me know. Do you agree with my breakdown? Did I miss something? That I misrepresent a point of view in the Manosphere or within the Black feminism? Y'all let me know. But thank you so much for listening if you've gotten this far. And we'll talk later, okay? Bye.